Hello everybody, welcome to Control City Freak. This is the YouTube channel where we talk about interstate highways and the places they are assigned to go to. Today we are talking about I-35. Oh, we've got a doozy of a road today. We see I-35 starts way down in South Texas in Laredo and goes all the way up to northern Minnesota in Duluth. It is the only interstate to split into two different east-west parts. Today we are going to talk about northbound I-35, and that means we are also going to be talking about 35E. I'm not going to do a north and a south for 35E and W. We will talk about 35W next week. 35 begins here in Laredo, right near the border. We see the Welcome to Texas sign right away, even though you're already in Texas, a good quarter mile into Texas at this point, because right behind you is a very large immigration and customs area for the border. So the actual Rio Grande is not for a little bit past this. So we see 35 starting out. Right here is the junction where 35 starts, along with US 59 and US 83. So here is 35's first interstate junction with 69W, which does not really go anywhere yet. It just goes to the World Trade Bridge. And from what I could see, it looks like it's a bridge over the Rio Grande that is used for truck traffic. Now approaching San Antonio, we got 35 north downtown San Antonio and the Alamo. So we've got a control building. Makes sense, I guess. The one time I went to San Antonio, of course, I made a beeline for the Alamo. That's what I wanted to check out while there. I highly recommend the basement. Downtown San Antonio is interesting on 35. We see the exit for 10 East Houston, while 10 West and 35 North are duplexed for a brief period of time. So we have two control cities, El Paso and Austin. Here's where 10 splits off for El Paso, and we've got quite a lot going on here. 35 North Austin, lower level, upper level, 37 Corpus Christi, and 281 Johnson City. So there is a freeway level split, and they want 37 traffic to stay on top and 35 traffic to stay on the bottom. You see a pretty good view of downtown San Antonio right before you go to the lower level. But since we're doing 35, I'm staying on the lower level here. So here's what it looks like on the lower level. I assume that is I-37 above us, although it could just be a different lane of 35. Nope, turns out it was 37 the whole time, kind of a pre-37. It's probably where we'll start on our 37 video, which will be coming soon, because they have this barrier in between the 35 lanes and 37 lanes, even once they're back on the same level. Here in Austin, things get a little weird. So 35 North, we're just getting where the express and local traffic is signed for. We don't have a overarching control city for either 35 or for 290. And here's what it looks like on the upper level on 35 near downtown Austin. Amazing that Austin's a city of 1 million people with a bunch of large suburbs. I know it's only a recent development that it's grown so big, but that 35 is the only interstate in town. It does not even have a 3-digit child interstate. 35 through Austin doesn't actually have any control cities on it, so this is on 290. And on 290, we see we are assigned for 35 North Waco. Also, shout out to Todd Lane. It's got to be an awesome street there. Let's talk about Waco. I am not in favor of this control city at all. No offense to the fine people of Waco. Waco is a large regional hub and the home of a major university, but Austin and Dallas are just both so big, and they're only about a 4-hour drive from each other. So I don't see the point of having a different city signed in between them, especially given that Waco doesn't have any kind of major highway junction or anything like that. If Waco is located where Abilene is, then it would make for a fine control city. based on its size and everything. But because of where it is, right wedged between Dallas and Austin, I think they should just sign each other and bypass Waco. Here's McLean Stadium, home of the Baylor Bears. They frequently beat up on my Kansas Jayhawks. Sensibly, coming out of Waco, we do get 35 North, Dallas, Fort Worth. Here in Hillsboro, 35W and 35E splits. Like I said at the top of the show, we are going to be following 35E through Dallas. In the southbound episode, we will follow 35W through Fort Worth. So 35 North, Dallas, Denton. We're getting Denton on the sign already here at I-20, still south of Dallas. And we continue, we get 30 West Fort Worth, 35E North Denton, 30 East Texarkana. Denton also, I have to say, I'm not in favor of Denton at all as a control city. Denton might have had like a different history from the Metroplex before, but it's been very much a part of the metro area for some time. I'm really not in favor of signing suburbs. I don't think that's the way to go. Signing Fort Worth is definitely an independent city and is huge in its own right. So yes, sign Fort Worth. But Denton, no. Only on a 3-digit interstate, not on a, especially one like 35, such a primary interstate. Here's a view of downtown Dallas. Downtown Dallas on 35 is pretty interesting. We have this sign for 245 and 75 Reunion Boulevard, Commerce Street, because there's not a direct interchange between 35 and 45. You have to cut over on another small freeway. Well, here we have history. Right here, the Texas Book Depository, where JFK was shot from, probably. Not getting into that. But interestingly, JFK's motorcade was actually bound for the Stemmons Freeway, for 35E. That was where they were heading. And they went past the book depository off of Main Street, north one block, because there was no way to get onto the freeway from Main Street. You had to go north one block. So that was the only reason they went past that to begin with. Finally, in Denton, we get 35 North Oklahoma City, which is what it should have been all along. Got a mileage sign here, Ardmore 18, Oklahoma City 112. And here we are reaching Oklahoma City 40 West Amarillo. And we're staying on East 40 North 35, Wichita Fort Smith. Although, if you're doing this drive for kicks, 235 is the more interesting way. 35 North Tulsa, Wichita. So we get that Tulsa on there because it is going to meet I-44 going to Tulsa. And here's where we have the junction with 44. We have a brief concurrency between with 35 and 44, and 44 west to Lawton. 44 splits off to go to Tulsa, and now we have 35 North Wichita. And we've made it to Kansas, my home state. Finally, first time on Control City Freak. We see a 3-city sign. This is generally how Kansas does it, having 3 cities on the mileage sign. Wichita isn't too far away at 40 miles, but it is the primary control, so they're putting that on the bottom line. I've been roasted a lot in the comments for mispronouncing various city names, and I understand nobody wants their cities named mispronounced. But now we're finally in an area that I know about, so I know the correct pronunciation of this, and that is Arkansas City. We join on to the Kansas Turnpike. This is the first toll road we've been on in Control City Freak. This is always an interesting sign. We have Denver signed 520 miles out via 135 North. It is the fastest way to Denver. Interesting, though, that it is signed at this point when 70 is very stingy about signing Denver throughout Kansas. This sign strikes me as kind of weird. 135, 235 South Wichita, Salina, North 35 Wichita, Kansas City. Almost anywhere you're going in Wichita, you want to get up at this exit. This goes to downtown Wichita. This is your best way to get around almost anywhere in Wichita. Staying on 35 North really is only good for getting to the east side of Wichita. I feel like this is the Kansas Turnpike Authority just trying to trick people to stay on to pay, a few miles more of toll instead of telling them, get off here for Wichita. Here is the Flint Hills, a very beautiful area in Kansas. I've driven through this a couple of times, always lovely. In fact, this is my picture of the Flint Hills. Awesome place to see. The pictures really don't do it justice. It really looks just amazing in real life. Here is where 35 and the Kansas Turnpike splits right by Emporia. Kind of interesting here because we have Kansas City on both Control City signs, as the Turnpike goes to Kansas City and 35 does as well. They go to different parts of town, but it would be hard to relate that on these signs. So Topeka and Emporia help as secondary controls. Outside of Kansas City, in the Kansas City metro area here in Overland Park or Lenexa, 35 meets 435, but 35 just gets a north through traffic kind of thing. However, we see 435 traffic has 35 sign for North Des Moines, which I feel is a little bit presumptuous. We still have quite a ways to go before we get to downtown Kansas City from this point. 35 continues this trend as we go further into the Kansas City area. Here we just have another through traffic sort of thing, and 635 gets no control city whatsoever. I do think Kansas City, Kansas would probably be the way to go there. Here we are in downtown Kansas City, 35 North Des Moines here, and we have west 670 to 70, Topeka, east 70 St. Louis. Although you could get on this eastbound road and end up in the same place since this is a big loop here. As is often the case in the Kansas City Alphabet downtown loop, there are no control cities whatsoever. We just get west 24, 70, south 169, and north 35, 70, east 24, and 169 thrown in as well. Again, no proper control city. Control city is just Independence Avenue. And coming out of the Alphabet Loop in Kansas City, we saw this in the 29 video, we now have North 2935 for St. Joseph and Des Moines, along with US 71. 29 and 35 are concurrent for a while, although 35 definitely seems to have the dominant role as it's the one that's more assigned more heavily, and it's the one that has the exit numbers. And now we have 35 North Des Moines, as it should be. Here's our second meeting with 435. It is a complete loop around town. We also have the Missouri Highway 110, the Chicago-Kansas City connector, which is an odd route. It isn't really the fastest way from Kansas City to Chicago. It's kind of a new thing. On the Illinois side, it's Illinois 110. Here we're approaching Des Moines, where we meet I-80. As we know from the I-29 video, 80 is signed for Council Bluffs, and 35 and 80 are concurrent for a while here for Davenport and Minneapolis. 235 is going into Des Moines, and just as I've always done when driving this for real, we're going to follow 235. We'll hit the 3580 on the way back south. So 235, it's a nice road. I like taking 235 through town. You have a nice view of downtown Des Moines. Later on, you see the Iowa Capitol building, although I don't have a picture of that. I couldn't find a good one from the road. And here is 235's end leaving Des Moines. We see North 35 in Minneapolis. Minneapolis does remain the control city throughout the rest of Iowa. I think this was a good choice by Iowa. They could have signed Ames coming out of Des Moines. Ames is fairly big, home of Iowa State University, but it's so close to Des Moines, I don't feel like it'd be a good control city. Minneapolis, better way to go. Here in Albert Lee, we have our junction with I-90, 90 West Sioux Falls, East La Crosse. For whatever reason, they don't have a pull-through sign for 35 saying where we're going control city-wise. But if you look to the right, you can see it on I-90. We're on North 35, Minneapolis-St. Paul now, not just Minneapolis. I thought this was quite interesting. In Minnesota, they put these mileage signs up on the bridges, at least in some parts, at least here, instead of having them on the side of the road. I think that's a good choice. Here is where 35 splits into west and east once again. So 35 North St. Paul, 35 West North Minneapolis. And again, like before, we'll be following 35E, and we will be following 35W in the southbound video. So we see 35E St. Paul. Within downtown St. Paul, we don't get a lot of control cities for anything. In fact, I couldn't see any anywhere. We just get north 35E, east 94, and then 94 and 35 are concurrent for a little bit. If we turn around here, we get a really nice view of St. Paul. Nice skyline. It'll probably look better on the southbound view. Unfortunately, southbound will be going through Minneapolis, so right now we just got to look over our shoulders. Finally, once we get to 694, on the north end of the Twin Cities area, we finally get a sign for 35E North Duluth. I've never been north of the Twin Cities on 35. I've been on a lot of 35, but not this far north. And looking at the Google Street View, I was really impressed. It's a beautiful looking road up here near Duluth. 35 is now signed for 2 Minnesota 61 North Shore. And here we have 535 South Wisconsin. Interesting. It's one of the rare child 3-digit interstates that goes into a state that the primary one does not. Also, I wonder why they don't have it as Superior, since Superior is a pretty big city in this area. In Duluth, there's a lot of complicated tunnels. You're in tunnels a lot, and low-cut roads. It's pretty interesting. I used to see maps of Duluth back in the day, and it had the dot kind of thing. So I just assumed I-35 was under construction, but it might have been marks of all these tunnels that are there instead. Here is pretty much the end of the line for 35. We have our last exit for London Road, and continuing more or less straight, we will be on Minnesota 61 North Shore, and we do get a nice end 35 1/4 mile sign here. All right, so let's talk about the way it should be Control City wise on northbound I-35. There's a lot of them, and this also includes 35E, both of them. Northbound, I believe it should be San Antonio, Austin, Dallas and Fort Worth co-signed, then just Dallas when you're on 35E, then Oklahoma City, Wichita, Kansas City, Des Moines, Minneapolis, St. Paul, again kind of co-signed every other sign, something like that, and finally Duluth where it ends. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Control City Freak. I really appreciate it. We will look at 35 South in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff. My name is Todd, and keep on trucking.